Melchizedek is a mysterious figure in the Bible, briefly appearing in the Old Testament, but holding considerable theological importance in Jewish and Christian traditions. For Christians, his character acts as a bridge between the Old and New Testaments, as a way of understanding who Jesus was by analogy. The writer of the letter to the Hebrews understands Jesus as being like Melchizedek in some ways. Melchizedek first appears in Genesis 14:18-20, after Abram, later Abraham, rescues his nephew Lot from invading kings. Melchizedek, described as the king of Salem and priest of God Most High, meets Abram and offers him bread and wine. He then blesses Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Abram, in turn, gives Melchizedek a tenth of everything. Several vital details emerge from this passage. Melchizedek is both a king and a priest, a rare combination in the Old Testament, and is associated with Salem, often identified with Jerusalem. His role as a priest of God Most High indicates that he worships the same God as Abram, even though the Levitical priesthood had not yet been established. His offering of bread and wine is symbolic in Christian tradition, prefiguring Holy Communion. Finally, by blessing Abram and receiving a tithe from him, Melchizedek's spiritual authority is recognized. Melchizedek appears again in Psalm 110, a so-called royal psalm associated with David, often interpreted as messianic. Verse 4 states, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek." This verse introduces the concept of an eternal priesthood, distinct from the Aaronic or Levitical priesthood established under the Mosaic law. By invoking Melchizedek, the psalm points to a priesthood that combines royal and priestly roles and suggests that this office has divine endorsement. This would later be interpreted as a reference to the Messiah, who, like Melchizedek, would serve as king and priest. The New Testament book of Hebrews offers the most detailed theological reflection on Melchizedek, particularly in chapters 5-7. The author of Hebrews uses Melchizedek to explain that Jesus can be considered a priest and king, like Melchizedek. Citing Psalm 110, Hebrews 5:5 and 6, emphasize that Jesus was divinely appointed as a high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Hebrews 7:1-3 presents Melchizedek as a figure without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, thus symbolizing the eternal nature of his priesthood and drawing a parallel to Jesus. Further, in Hebrews 7:11-17, Jesus' eternal priesthood is said to be like that of Melchizedek, as Jesus' priesthood is not based on ancestry, but a divine appointment. Melchizedek thus serves as a typology, a foreshadowing of Christ, in several crucial ways for the author of the letter to the Hebrews. For the writer, Jesus' eternal priesthood, suggested by the lack of genealogy in the text, parallels Jesus' eternal existence. Melchizedek's combined role as king and priest prefigures Jesus' role as king and high priest. By receiving tithes from Abram, Melchizedek's importance is demonstrated. For the writer of the letter to the Hebrews, Melchizedek and Jesus act as intermediaries between God and humanity, a role central to understanding Jesus' priesthood. The letter to the Hebrews uses Melchizedek to show how Jesus fulfills the priesthood. But unlike Levitical priests, who offered repeated sacrifices for sins, Jesus is said to have offered himself as the perfect sacrifice once and for all. His priesthood is eternal, providing ongoing intercession for believers and establishing a covenant based on grace. Melchizedek's brief appearances in Scripture thus carry profound theological weight, ultimately pointing to a way of understanding who Jesus is. Melchizedek's role in the Bible enriches our understanding of Jesus as the ultimate high priest and king. Melchizedek's brief but significant appearances in Genesis 14, Psalm 110, and the letter to the Hebrews highlight a divine priesthood. For the writer of the letter to the Hebrews, Melchizedek foreshadows Christ's eternal role in God's redemptive plan by drawing upon an essential character of the Hebrew Scriptures.